I want you to imagine, just for a second, that you're living inside a house.
Okay.
And, I mean, it is a beautiful, like, meticulously designed house. The temperature is perfectly controlled to your exact liking. The couch is incredibly soft. And your favorite show is always playing on the TV.
Sounds pretty ideal.
Right. You're perfectly comfortable. But here's the catch. You have lived in this house for years, maybe even decades, and you have never once walked up to the front door, turned the handle, and checked to see if it is locked from the outside.
Wow. Yeah, you just assume it's the only place you can possibly be.
Exactly. You just assume.
It is it's a really profound thought experiment, largely because of how human psychology actually works.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the brain is constantly trying to conserve energy, right? Processing the infinite complexity of the outside world is just exhausting.
Oh, for sure.
So we build these internal frameworks, these metaphorical houses, just to make reality manageable. And as long as the temperature stays perfect, the evolutionary imperative is to just stay on the couch.
Just don't move.
Right. The thought of checking the door never even crosses your mind because the walls, they feel like a necessary sanctuary.
But so what happens when that house stops feeling like a sanctuary? Like what happens when the air gets stale, the couch feels like a trap, and you certainly feel inexplicably miserable, but you still won't check the door?
That is the big question.
Today, we're taking a deep dive into an essay that tackles that exact creeping sense of suffocation. The piece is called How to Break Out of Your Cognitive Boundaries, and it was written by Sweffing. And the specific translation we're analyzing today was edited by Kinyu back in July of 2023. Our mission here is to map out these invisible walls, these cognitive boundaries we build to protect ourselves.
Right.
And figure out the mechanics of knocking them down so we can actually expand our lives. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, let's do it. So the author lays down a crucial baseline pretty early on, which is that living within your own walls until old age can actually be a perfectly decent life.
Really? Just staying inside forever?
Yeah, I mean, if you are genuinely content, there's no inherent flaw in staying inside the house. Cognitive boundaries only become toxic the very second you feel oppressed or stifled or miserable within your current reality.
I see.
That negative emotion, that's the alarm bell. It's the psychological indicator that a framework designed to protect you has sort of calcified into a prison, and it is time to dismantle it.
Which sounds incredibly liberating on paper, right? Like, step outside, breathe the fresh air.
Definitely.
But Soothing's very first instruction on how to actually initiate this breakout is, honestly, it's brutal.
It is. It really is.
The essay makes this incredibly bold claim. It says the absolute first step to breaking down your cognitive walls is admitting when you are wrong.
Right.
And not just making a tiny concession. The argument is that the vast majority of suffering in this world is created and actively endured by people who firmly, unshakably believe they are right.
What's fascinating here is the underlying mechanism.
Break that down for me.
Well, when you declare absolute certainty about a situation, you effectively shut off your brain's intake valve for new information.
Oh, wow.
You've laid the bricks, mortared the walls, and locked the door. By declaring, I am right, you create this rigid cognitive boundary that reality is now forced to conform to.
Right.
And when reality inevitably refuses to conform, you suffer.
I have to push back on this quite a bit.
Sure, go ahead.
Because, I mean, look at the world around us. Society universally rewards conviction.
That's true.
If I'm leading a company or flying an airplane or running a family and I'm constantly walking around saying, well, I might be completely wrong about everything, I am going to lose everyone's trust immediately.
Yeah, you would.
We admire people who stand their ground. Doesn't leadership literally require certainty?
That's a great point, but there's a vital distinction to be made between decisiveness and absolute certainty.
Okay, what's the difference?
Decisiveness is the ability to choose a path based on the best available data and just commit to action. Absolute certainty, though, is blinding yourself to the possibility that the data might change.
Oh, I see.
Or that your initial assessment was flawed. You can be a highly effective leader who makes strong decisions while still maintaining the cognitive flexibility to say, hey, the parameters have shifted, my previous framework is no longer serving us, I was wrong, let's pivot.
Okay, so it's really about the ego's refusal to update the map.
Exactly.
It makes me think of, like, trying to navigate a massive, complex maze. Imagine you're in this maze, and you are entirely convinced you memorized the map flawlessly before you walked in.
Right.
You take a left turn, and you're facing a solid brick wall.
Uh-huh.
But because you're absolutely certain your memory is flawless, you refuse to admit it's a dead end. Admitting you're wrong feels like this huge blow to your ego.
Yeah, it hurts.
So what do? You just keep walking face first into the brick wall, over and over again, getting bruised, getting a concussion, all the while shouting, "The map says this is the way out."
Yes, that is exactly it.
The physical bruising is terrible, but it's entirely self-inflicted. If you could just swallow your pride, admit your internal map was faulty, you could turn around and find the actual exit.
That captures the psychological loop perfectly. The suffering is literally the friction between your rigid belief and an unyielding reality.
Man, that's heavy.
It is. The moment you finalize the thought, "I am right," you have established the absolute limit of your universe. As Yufeng points out, the insistence on being right is precisely what builds the prison cell.
I want you, the listener, to think about a specific situation in your life right now that is causing you deep, chronic frustration.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible that your misery is stemming from an absolute, unyielding insistence that you are right about how things should be, rather than engaging with how things actually are?
It's a really tough question to ask yourself.
It is a heavy question. But it gets even heavier when we move from the individual to the entire society.
Right, and this is where the essay shifts scope dramatically. Yufeng expands this concept of self-inflicted prisons to show how entire populations can trap themselves in collective cognitive boundaries.
Yeah, the essay brings up a pretty provocative critique of Chinese history.
It does.
Xuefeng analyzes thousands of years of cultural narrative and argues that there's this deeply ingrained collective expectation, like an anticipation that whenever things get unimaginably difficult, a wise ruler or an Eastern sage will suddenly appear to save the people from their hardships.
And the critique is really centered on the paralysis that this narrative creates.
Right.
The framework assumes that salvation comes from a mythical external force rather than, internal systemic action.
It is such a vivid illustration of a macro boundary. Like, imagine a town where the entire power grid fails. The town is plunged into darkness, food is boiling, businesses are failing. But instead of the townspeople forming a co-op, learning basic electrical engineering, pooling resources, and physically repairing the infrastructure themselves.
Which Yufeng equates to solving problems through legality, procedures, and practical work.
Right, exactly. But instead of doing any of that, they all just sit in the dark.
Wow.
For generations. Just staring at the horizon, waiting for a legendary prophesied engineer to descend from the mountains and flip the switch for them.
That's a great way to put it.
Shatter doesn't mince words here. The essay literally calls this mindset sheer folly. It is a collective delusion that keeps a population helpless.
And when a cognitive boundary operates at that scale, the breakout has to be equally massive.
Right.
To illustrate what happens when a collective boundary is finally shattered, Yufeng points to the Indian diaspora.
Oh, yeah, this part was fascinating.
The breakthrough is encapsulated in this really stark, pragmatic philosophy: change the country or immigrate.
Yeah, the essay notes that roughly 32 million Indians have broken the boundary of staying in their homeland, renouncing their citizenship to move elsewhere.
32 million? It's staggering.
We are talking about massive global movement here. And Yufeng lists all these personal observations spanning decades, right?
Yeah, highly specific ones.
Like shops in Zimbabwe in the early 90s, businesses across half a dozen African nations.
Right, South Africa, Mozambique, Angola, Ethiopia, Botswana, Tanzania.
Yeah, and then Pacific Islands like Fiji and Vanuatu in 2016. Supermarkets and hotels in Canada, all the way up to executives running Google and Microsoft and high-level political figures like the Prime Minister of the UK, Sajid Javid.
It's incredible.
It is. But what I want to understand is the actual mechanism here.
Okay.
It's not just that 32 million people bought plane tickets. Why does changing your geography shatter a cognitive boundary so effectively?
Well, because geography is inherently tied to cultural conditioning.
Oh, interesting.
When you live in the society you were born into, you are subconsciously bound by its invisible rules, its class structures, its historical expectations, its formal limitations.
Right.
When you completely sever that geographical tie and step into an entirely alien environment, those invisible rules just vanish.
They're gone.
Exactly. You are stripped of the comfort of your societal house. You no longer know the formal, unspoken rules of the new country. So you are forced to rely purely on practicality, resilience, and adaptability to survive.
You essentially wipe the operating system clean.
Precisely.
If you stay home, you might be limited by a cognitive boundary that says, people from my background don't start businesses.
Right.
But when you move across the globe, that boundary just doesn't exist in the new context. You are forced to build a new framework from scratch, and without those legacy limitations, the potential for wealth, opportunity, and generational success just explodes.
The physical movement forces a psychological rewiring. It is the ultimate proof of concept for the essay's core thesis. Stepping outside the established walls grants access to a vastly larger realm of possibilities.
But, it is easy to look at 32 million people moving across the globe and think, wow, I could never do that. My life is here.
Sure.
We don't have to renounce our citizenship to break a boundary, though. Some of the most rigid, limiting walls we build are inside our own houses, literally, in how we define our families and our daily ambitions.
Right, and this brings the framework down to the micro level. Shifeng challenges one of the most universally accepted cognitive boundaries in human history, which is the definition of family.
Yeah, this is a big one.
The widely accepted wall is that relatives are strictly those connected to you by blood and DNA.
Right. If you do not share genetics, you are not family. That is the boundary.
And mathematically, if you only count blood relations, your circle of true intimacy is inherently tiny.
It really is.
Your entire support network, your emotional safety net, is artificially limited by biology.
Reading that, my initial instinct was deep skepticism.
Really? How so?
Well, it sounds wonderful on a coffee mug to say, friends of the family you choose. But biological family carries real, legal, societal, and historical weight.
That's very true.
Can you genuinely mentally decide a stranger is your family and have it operate with the same depth and reliability as a blood tie?
Shifeng argues from direct lived experience that you absolutely can, but it requires a complete dismantling of how you view obligation.
Okay, explain that.
By breaking the boundary of blood ties and choosing to consider anyone who is close and intimate as family, completely ignoring their region, race, societal status, or background, you fundamentally change the architecture of your reality.
The essay points out something staggering here.
Yeah.
It says that by treating these individuals as family, Shufeng actually receives care and practical assistance from them that often surpasses what is provided by biological children.
Yeah, it completely shatters the illusion that biology guarantees loyalty or support.
Wow. Yeah, it really does.
Someone who strictly adheres to the blood-only boundary lives a very fragile existence. If their small biological family is dysfunctional or distant, they are entirely alone.
It's a scary thought.
But someone who has dismantled that wall and defined a massive, diverse community as their family operates with a robust, almost unshakable support network, it broadens the entire scope of your existence.
It's the difference between accepting the tribe you were assigned and actively building the tribe you need.
Well said.
And speaking of things we build, the essay pivots from how we define our family to how we define our life's work, specifically focusing on the boundaries we set for our children's futures.
Right, the career boundary. Shifeng contrasts two fundamentally opposed cognitive perspectives.
Which are?
Graduate from school and find a job versus graduate from school and start a business.
This was easily the most illuminating part of the essay for me.
Oh, really?
Because this isn't just a casual conversation about whether you prefer a salary or want to be an entrepreneur. This specific boundary dictates the entire mechanism of how a parent educates and molds a child from birth.
The domino effect is just massive.
Yeah.
If your cognitive boundary is success means my child must find a good job, then the entire educational apparatus is viewed through the lens of compliance.
Right, just fitting.
School becomes about passing standardized tests, memorizing existing information, and making the student an attractive, employable asset to someone else's existing structure.
Swifting makes a brilliant distinction here. The essay states that the job seeker mindset becomes hyper-focused on formalities, while the entrepreneurial mindset becomes focused on practicality.
Yes. Formality versus practicality is the defining rift here.
Right.
A job seeker is optimizing for the formal structure. Like, is my resume formatted perfectly? Am I wearing the exact right suit to the interview? Am I using the correct corporate jargon?
So true.
The energy is spent learning how to fit seamlessly into a box that someone else built.
An entrepreneur, operating purely on practicality, just doesn't care about the suit or the jargon.
Not at all.
They only care about the mechanics of reality. Like, does this product actually work? Will a human being pay money for it? Can I build this efficiently?
Exactly.
It reminds me of two kids playing a video game, but they don't realize they're playing entirely different genres.
Oh, I like that analogy.
The job seeker is playing a rigid simulation game. They have to follow the pre-coded path, hit the specific checkpoints, and obey the game's rules to win.
Right.
The entrepreneur is playing an open-world sandbox game. They're just dropped into a physics engine with raw materials and told to build their own rules.
And over a lifetime, existing in the simulation versus the sandbox creates an almost insurmountable disparity in how you experience the world.
I can imagine.
It dictates your perception of risk, your resilience, and ultimately your taste in life. One path teaches you to ask for permission. The other teaches you to manipulate reality.
Which is an incredible segue into the final layer of this essay.
Yeah, the deepest layer.
If our careers and our families are the interior design of the house, money and mortality are the foundational walls that hold the entire structure up. These are the ultimate existential boundaries. Let's look at the money boundary first.
Schiffing identifies a wildly pervasive cognitive wall, which is the belief that without money, you cannot get things done.
It is essentially the operating system of modern capitalism, right?
Pretty much.
But what happens to human psychology when this becomes your absolute unbreakable cognitive boundary?
Well, when you believe money is the solitary mechanism for action and value, your entire life begins to revolve around its acquisition and preservation.
Right.
The mechanism of this boundary is, well, it's corruption by reduction. It reduces every complex human interaction into a simple transaction.
I picture it like wearing a highly advanced universal translator device in your ear, but the device is broken, and it only translates the world into the language of profit.
Wow, yeah.
If you stand on a mountain and look at a breathtaking sunset, the device just feeds you static because it cannot quantify the view. If someone offers you genuine vulnerability, the translator outputs zero value. If your cognitive boundary dictates that money is the only thing that matters, every relationship and decision is filtered through that broken translator.
And Schiffing details the profound cost of wearing that device.
What's the cost?
The essay argues that this boundary leads inevitably to vulgarity and superficiality. You become completely numb to things that lack a price tag.
That is so bleak.
The text specifically lists what is lost. It says you begin to ignore and eventually show contempt for life's true blessings: love, sexuality, morality, justice, spirituality, and the Tao.
And just to clarify for our listeners, when the author mentions the Tao, they are referring to the ancient philosophical concept of the natural, harmonious flow and order of the universe.
Yes, thank you for clarifying that.
So love, justice, the natural flow of the universe, these are the foundational elements of the human experience. Schiffing is warning us that by worshiping the boundary of money, you are locking yourself in a highly secure vault. You might be surrounded by cash, but you have entirely sealed yourself off from the sky, from connection, from meaning.
Which leads directly to the ultimate final boundary we all face, the boundary of life and death.
This is the heaviest and most sensitive concept in the essay. Schiffing challenges the absolute belief that physical death is the definitive, permanent end of existence.
Holding the cognitive boundary that there is absolutely nothing beyond the physical material world is, according to the essay, a blinding limitation.
Really?
Yeah, the text suggests that this rigid materialist view prevents a person from ever finding the door to heaven.
Okay, so a spiritual concept.
Whether a reader interprets that phrase through a strict religious lens or philosophically as a state of transcendent peace and broader perspective, the core argument is about the danger of a limited horizon.
And Schiffing uses this concept of limited horizons to explore the tragedy of suicide. The empathy and psychological clarity in this section are really striking.
It requires careful analysis for sure. Schiffing explores the mechanics of why someone reaches that devastating point. The explanation is deeply rooted in the concept of invisible walls closing in.
Right. The essay proposes that suicide occurs because, within a person's specific, rigid cognitive boundaries, at that exact agonizing moment, they literally cannot perceive a reason or an opportunity to continue.
The walls of their internal house have contracted so tightly that they have blocked out every single window.
Man.
It is crucial to understand the mechanism here. It's not that options, joy, or paths forward cease to exist in the objective world.
Right, they're still out there.
It's that within the confines of their current cognitive boundary, those options are functionally invisible. The pain is the only thing inside the room with them.
The options haven't vanished from the earth. They have just vanished from view.
Exactly.
It is heartbreaking. But out of that dark analysis comes the most profound realization of the entire deep dive.
Yeah, the light at the end of the tunnel.
Schiffing concludes that if a person in that critical, desperate moment of darkness could somehow just shatter that immediate cognitive boundary,
Right.
if they could just knock down that one specific wall that is telling them everything is hopeless, their entire universe would instantly expand.
The realization, the sudden flooding of light into the room, would be the understanding that, as the author puts it, wow, life's path is so vast.
Life's path is so vast. I love that. If you could just shatter the illusion that your current painful, limited perspective is the entire universe, you suddenly see a million different roads stretching out in front of you.
It is the ultimate culmination of the essay. Stepping beyond cognitive boundaries, whether they're intellectual, societal, or existential, is the only way to experience the true vastness of what it means to be alive.
We have mapped out a massive amount of territory today. We look at the bruising stubbornness of the ego and how clinging to the belief that you're always right is just building your own prison cell. We explored the societal paralysis of waiting for a mythical savior instead of learning to fix the grid yourself.
We analyzed how redefining family beyond biology multiplies your emotional safety net, and how teaching a child the mechanics of the sandbox rather than the rules of the simulation fundamentally rewires their potential.
And we stared down the ultimate walls. The blinding, broken translator of making money your only reality, and the tragic illusion that the pain inside your current boundary is the only path that exists.
Right.
Stepping outside the house is the only way to see the horizon.
But as we close, there is a fascinating paradox embedded in all of this.
Oh, what's that?
Well, if human psychology naturally, instinctively builds these frameworks and boundaries to make sense of a chaotic universe, what actually happens the moment you break out of one?
Do you step out to absolute infinite freedom?
Or, because the way our brains process reality, do you simply step out of a small house and immediately begin constructing a larger, slightly more comfortable house?
Oh, wow.
And if it is the latter, if we are biologically destined to always build walls to comprehend our reality, then perhaps the ultimate goal of life is not to achieve a mythical state of living completely without boundaries.
Right.
Perhaps the goal is simply to commit to the endless active process of demolition, to constantly test the handle, knock down the walls, and rebuild your framework wider and wider and wider until the day you die.
That is a beautiful and haunting thought to carry with you. Are you ever truly out in the wild, or are you just expanding the floor plan?
Exactly.
Wherever you find yourself today, whatever house you are currently living in, take a hard look at the walls around you this week. Look at the beliefs you hold as absolute, unshakable truths. Walk up to the front door of your certainty, grab the handle, and just check. You might be shocked to discover it was never locked from the outside to begin with.